Every Sunday, about every 3 or 4 months, I would do I'm going to get in control of my finances. This is when I was an employee at another organization. I'm going to get in control of my finances because I'm sick of us not having any money left over. And I would go organize everything in QuickBooks or in Quicken. And then I would manage it and track it for like 2 days, and then it would all fall apart. And then I would start that cycle again like 3 months later. So I created a system that's like, well, no, as a 30-year-old, I have to be able to manage freaking money. What is going on here? So I created a system that is the personal finance version of then what I discovered to be profit first.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Business can be easy if you do the hard work of building the systems. As they say in the SEALs, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's our topic for today. And it leads to more fun and profit while working less. And our guest loves Profit First, and he's spoken at ProfitCon in the past. Did you know we have our own Profit First conference? Matter of fact, I'll be there this year. It's where I learn how to better serve you. Brad has an expertise in helping you build a smooth scaling business so that you can maximize life profit. In other words, how to build the business in life that you actually want rather than a business in life that you wake up one day and unfortunately have. By the way, we dig into that softer side all the time on my other podcast, Richer Soul. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Let's meet Brad. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Brad. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
So my name is Brad Martineau. First and foremost, before we get to the business, I've been married for 23 years. I got 5 kids. Recently found out that, so my oldest one is married, so I've got a son-in-law as well. And then I just recently found out that we got a granddaughter on the way. So that'll be coming up soon. I know I have a lot of gray in the beard, but I don't feel nearly old enough to be talking about myself as a grandpa. But outside of that, I love fitted hats and I love basketball. So I still play. I try to. I love to coach. And that pretty much, now you know everything about me. From a business standpoint, I have 2 primary businesses that I started and run. One of them is called SixthDivision, and we help entrepreneurs. Ultimately, what we want to do is help them build a smooth scaling business, one that lets them get the results that they want without having to sacrifice their life and their soul. I feel like that might be a theme that comes up today. And we do it specifically by helping them corral all of the technology, strategies, and ideas that they're trying to put into place about how to get clients and make them happy. And we help them make it easy and organized so they can do it faster and get better results. And then I have a software side of sort of the Brad Martineau world of business. It's called PlusThis. And we build tools to help entrepreneurs do all the things that I just talked about on the SixthDivision side. So we got a handful of tools over there on that side. So that's it. All of my entrepreneurial endeavors to date have been aimed at the entrepreneur, My personal sweet spot preference is the six figures, trying to get to multiple six figures into seven figures, even into early seven figures. Once you get beyond that, it's like, you've reached a level of success that you probably have the resources you need. We have clients that are in that realm, but I really love I'm trying to make this thing work. How do I make it work? Because somewhere in the multiple six figures to early seven figures, like it just changes your life. And that for me is where the fun comes into play.
I deal with a lot of seven-figure business owners that still haven't figured it out.
Yes. It's when you get into the mid to high seven figures, it's like really what it is like, well, there's so many other layers. It's like somebody else can go unravel that ball of wax. I like when it's more like, no, we're at the entrepreneur level and we can really see a massive impact there. And like I said, we've got clients there, but you're 100% right. That's like one of the big misnomers is as soon as I get there, like things just work. No, they're harder to make work. It's actually easier when you're smaller and you have less resources that are moving around. It actually gets harder. And sometimes you just have to learn that through painful experience. But yeah, 100%.
And I think there's that dip. There's the dip that starts to happen, I think, when you've hit about $500,000. And it probably troughs out at about 2 to 3 million, where, oh my God, look at all my revenue. Why aren't I making any money? And then it starts to come back up. And at 5 million, you've got enough money to pay for all the people you need to do all the things. But you got to have a plan to get through the dip. Or you can create a business that doesn't take you through the dip.
Yes. And if you are not intentional and aware and don't have a really clear plan, the dip will be unnecessarily large. So there is a dip because you got to invest in the infrastructure, but a lot of people are like, oh, I guess this is just the dip that I'm in or whatever. There's that book about like leaps or whatever. Like there's certain places in your business where you just like, you make way less money. It's like, yeah, but you don't always have to make way less money. You could make more money. It is going to be a little bit less, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that much of a dip. Just depends on how well you're prepared and you're clear on what you want.
And I think part of it also is understanding what that growth looks like. And what I find is too often entrepreneurs build before it's there, or they hire before they need it. And that's what causes the dip. Whereas if they would do a better job of timing how and when and scaling into it, instead of stepping into it, they could avoid parts of that.
Yeah, I could pull out some painful past stories in my entrepreneurial journey that might exactly fall into what you're talking about. But yes, 100%.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, let's do. All right, so the one that comes to mind specifically. So on the SixthDivision side, we got a multiple seven-figure coaching and agency company. We did seven figures in our first year, and then we just kind of kept methodically growing. We got to the point where I think this happened when we were sitting right around $3 million a year in revenue. So you almost described it like verbatim. We had anticipated like, well, here's how we're going to grow. We're going to get to these numbers because they're the thing that we put into the Excel spreadsheet and on the whiteboard. So that's what we're going to get to. And in order to do that, we're going to need people, and we need to have really good people because we want to deliver amazing quality for our clients. So we're going to go hire them, and then we'll sell into having those clients. And then what happened is we hired them, and I don't know, this crazy thing happened. We didn't hit all of our crazy projections about how we were going to sell directly into that, but we had all these people. And so I ended up, it ended up being like, well, I'm the owner, entrepreneur, and I'm the guy that goes around and speaks to try to get the leads so that we can sell them, so that we can deliver for them. And I'm traveling 2 or 3 times a week. I got 5 kids. So like, it's not a good thing to be gone that much. And I'm traveling around. I don't make any more or less money based on what happens when I go travel and speak, but I'm the one that's carrying the weight of, I got to go deliver this presentation to generate the leads so that I can make enough money to pay the sales reps commissions so they can then close people, hand them off to the clients, to our coaches, so we can make enough money to pay them. And it was exhausting. And I absolutely made way less money than I could have if I had done what we do now. So there was this realization. I think this analogy might be helpful if anybody's been through that experience where it's like when you're trying to drive your car and you accidentally put it into 4th gear. And it's like, why is the car not going? It's like, well, you should start in 1st gear and then go to 2nd gear and then go to 3rd gear. And the analogy that hit for me, I was driving home kind of like, what am I doing with this thing? And the analogy hits like, oh, dude, this is what you're doing. It's like you're wearing an extra large t-shirt. You actually fit into a medium t-shirt. And your answer is that you're going to go to the gym 5 times a day and you're going to eat like The Rock and eat like 6,000 calories to get swole to fit the shirt. And as I was walking out the door, the thought hit like, or you know what you could do? You could just go buy a medium shirt. Like you could just go switch the shirt that you're buying so that you're not like at the gym 5 times a day. And so that mantra in the back of my head is just buy the medium-sized shirt. And we did. We went from $244,000 in expenses 1 month, and 3 months later it was 84.4. And we just like trimmed the thing all the way back down. And then we started to rebuild it. Actually, I gave a talk at a digital marketing event. It was called when I had to scale back to scale up. And the guy that introduced me is like, Brad's going to tell you about the time that he sucked. I'm like, thank you. And that's exactly what I did. But it taught me, at least I learned mostly from my mistakes. What it taught me was we put a whole model in place that was like, look, I have a core set of resources and I want to grow. So what we're going to do is we're going to flex those resources and we're going to pay them extra, compensate them extra to be able to get the clients first. It sounds so dumb when every time I say it, I'm like, we decided we were going to get the clients first and then go make the income, then go acquire the expenses. But that's our model. We can grow. And it's like, you scale, and there's a point where you can't anymore. But for us, we don't need to scale to a full client load for a new person. We just need to scale to enough to pay for them. And so for people that are like in the P&L and financial world, I literally had 2 P&Ls that I would draw on the board. One was, this is what it takes for the business to exist. And if I want to add 1 new person, I just need a P&L for that 1 new person. So what's it going to cost me at their base salary with whatever overhead I have? And I just need to make enough money to pay for that person on top of my regular. So if my regular P&L number, let's just go even numbers, is $100,000 covers all the expenses, I'm going to hire a new person in between salary and benefits and whatever other stuff we do. Let's just say it's $10,000 total will cover them. And I charge $2,500 a client. Then I need to get 4 clients above and beyond my normal regular load, spread them out across my current team members, and then I can go hire that person and they're paid for. And while we're trying to hire that person, I have $10,000 that I can use to compensate the people that are currently in the organization for the extra work that they're doing until this person gets up and running. And it was like, oh, hey, we probably could have done that first. I don't know, like buy a medium-sized shirt, go to the gym, get too big for the medium-sized shirt, then go buy a large shirt. It's like, it's just so obvious, but it wasn't. And it sucked. And if you're in that situation, I'm sorry, but there is hope. There is hope to get out of it. So that was literally my experience. And it's exactly what you were describing.
So I'll go with the gym analogy because I like to lift. I didn't go in the gym, sit down on the bench and load it with weights and go, let me see if I can lift this. Because I was scared enough with an empty bar the first time I did it. You start with an empty bar and you get your reps and sets in. And then you start adding a little bit of weight. And when you can lift that and you do it comfortably, you add a little bit more weight. And then you do it comfortably. And it's the same thing you're talking about. And what I'll talk to business owners about is you can flex up. Maybe you've got a couple people who are willing to work part-time, who, they don't want to be with you full-time. They'll come in. They're like, oh, if you get busy, call me. I'll do a little bit, but then I want to go away. Hey, those are my flex people that allow you to build up. And that's one way to do it. The other is to have, depending on the business, subcontractors. And so, we have our core people. When we start to build, we use subs, depending again the business. And then when we can hire, then we hire. But you always want to make sure that you can always support your core team, even if there's a little bit of a pullback. And you got to be aware of that because nobody ever wants to let somebody go.
Yeah, the other piece I would throw in there too, and this will go back to your weightlifting analogy. So all of that is you got to make sure you take care of your core. And then you got to have a plan for expansion and like flexing up or flexing down where you don't get to that, right? It's kind of like if your personal budget is so razor thin that if one thing goes wrong, everything falls apart. Like you probably don't have enough buffer for flexing up and flexing down and handling situations. The other side of it is the way that you can get more room for flexing is actually in how you run the business. Like it's the systems and the processes that run your business. And one of the things that we found that was really important is we could take our current team and they could be the flex because we baked in extra bandwidth for them. But then what we also did is we said, before we go do this, we're going to get really, really clear about exactly what happens when a client signs up, about exactly how we sell, about exactly how we do every part of this so that you're not spending any unnecessary time or energy. And then by doing that, it takes them less time to actually work with clients, which means they have more time to take on more clients. So I didn't actually even incur any extra cost to allow myself to flex. The equivalent in the weight room for me would be, you can start with a low weight. If your form is really, really bad, you'll get stronger, but there will come a time where it will all fall apart. So it's a little bit of a false sense of security because you're going to start to get up. And then at some point, you're going to hurt yourself when you get to a certain weight because your mechanics are off. Your process of how you're lifting the weight is off. Same thing happens in the business. You might have all these things dialed in, but if your underlying process isn't dialed in and you're just relying on some amazing people that kind of figure stuff out, there will come a time when you're flexing, and it could be, depending on the business, it could be at 250,000, it could be at 500,000, it could be at 2 million, wherever it is. But there's going to come a time where it's like, no, infrastructure underneath this is not strong enough to support where we are. This will come crumbling down, and that's kind of painful. So like, I think those are the two pieces: is have a plan, but also I always say the first hire and the first time that you delegate, you're delegating to a system, not to a person. Don't go find a body to solve a pain point. Define the system, and then you hire somebody and you plug them into the system.
And I agree with that. I'm a big fan of systems and processes, whether it's scaling up, traction, clockwork, E-Myth. I don't care what system you use. I'm system agnostic. I'm like, whichever system you will use and you like and fits your business works fine for me. Since you talked about finances, let's take a step back. You're familiar with Profit First. Do you have a Profit First story?
Yes, I do. So my initial Profit First story, this goes way back to, I turned 30 and I was dealing with my personal finances. This was back when like all the rage was Quicken and Microsoft Money. And I had finally gotten to the end of my rope where, I don't know if anybody else had been through this cycle, but I felt like every Sunday, about every 3 or 4 months, I would do okay, I'm going to get in control of my finances. This is when I was an employee at another organization. I'm going to get in control of my finances because I'm sick of us not having any money left over. And I would go organize everything in QuickBooks or in Quicken. And then I would manage it and track it for like 2 days. And then it would all fall apart. And then I would start that cycle again like 3 months later. So I created a system that's like, well, no, as a 30-year-old, I have to be able to manage freaking money. What is going on here? So I created a system that is the personal finance version of then what I discovered to be Profit First. And so when I set it up, it was like, well, no, money comes in. Here's how much money I want to have left over. Here are all of my other budgets of where I'm going to put things. And I remember reading an article that talked about the 65% rule. And the guy just said, what I find is that when 65% of my money covers all of my like committed living expenses and the rest goes to savings or whatever, everything just works. So like, I'm going to try and do that. And when I did my first analysis of how much of my money was committed, this is just personal income, but how much of my money was committed, it was 98.7% of my income was already committed before I ever got the money. And then, 3 or 6 months later, we had that down to it's probably about 70%, maybe 75%. And we keep whittling it down. And then Profit First came across and I'm reading the book. I'm like, oh my gosh, there are other people that think this way. Like how you should be born and then they should hand you this book of how to think about money. And that's the way that it should be. So I was like, oh, sweet. There's a business approach too. And it was like this opening because I had kind of thought about how that would apply to business, but I thought maybe I was just being weird, bringing my personal finance system over. And then I read Profit First, and we've been at some of Mike's events and all of that. But I was like, oh yeah, this. So that was my introduction. It was Profit First. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't have a label for it. But when I found it, it was like, yeah, this 100%, I'm in.
It's funny. I always thought business owners understood the business of business. I'm like, oh, you went into business. You understand business. That was an eye opener for me. But what wasn't an eye opener was when I turned about 21, 22 years old, I forget, got out of college, I set up and automated all my saving systems with multiple accounts for multiple purposes, for multiple time frames. And so whenever money came in, it automatically went places. And I lived on what was left. And so that's just the way I lived. And I was like, this is guaranteed to make me rich. And so I'm just going to do this.
So it just makes sense. Yeah, I'll do that.
It just makes sense, right? It works. The math says it works. And at some point, I got this aha about the business owners. And I read the Profit First book. I'm like, Mike had to learn this. It's just common sense, right? And I was like, oh, this. And I'm like, I could write this book. And then I'm like, no, I don't like to write books. That's not my I'll just, go get certified by Mike to put his system in. They'll hand me everything and I can go do the parts of the business I love. And, Mike can do the parts that I don't love. And it all worked out wonderfully.
I love it. Yeah, it was the same thing for me. For me, actually, it was interesting. My experience was like in my personal financial system, like I have a lot of accounts because it makes my life really easy. And then I would talk to other people and they didn't. And as just like personal stance, if you have a single like personal checking account, like your life has got to be crazy and messed up. I don't know how you actually live that way. And everyone I came across, they'd be like, you have how many accounts? And so I thought I thought I was the weird one because nobody else had the system set up like this. And then it was like, then I started to read the book, and then you get that eye-opening experience of, oh yeah, most people don't have it set up this way, and then they wonder why it's really hard to manage stuff. So it's been an interesting journey, and it's like intuitively makes sense, but then at the same time, it's like, it seems overly complicated. It's like, well, it's not. It's actually way less complicated than all of the tracking stuff you're trying to do. So yes, I've had a similar experience.
And I agree with you. And I've been using Quicken for 30 plus years. And so I can run, all of those things. I've been using QuickBooks forever too. And you got to have access to your numbers. But once we know our numbers, right? We know what we want to do in business. How do we build kind of that customer journey? How do we create the raving fans? Because that's what every business wants, right? They want people who love them. They want people that they can attract without having to kill themselves to do it.
Yeah. So one thing I want to hit on before I answer that question, just real quick, because I think it's an important piece that I want to make sure doesn't get lost in what we just talked about. Because your statement is like, yeah, so now we know our numbers. And in that, the very first thing is not just are you familiar with what the numbers are, do you know what you want them to be? And have you actually vetted that? So I have a thing that I share with people. I got a video on my YouTube channel. We can probably give people a link to it. We talk about, I call it the return. And it's before we talk about how do we get my clients and how to make that all run and how do I make my business run better? I think the first question you have to answer is you got to have a really clear picture of what are you trying to get out of it? And before we even hopped on, the very first thing you said is like, yeah, I just sort of like reverse engineered my business to be like, well, this is what I want. So I'm going to make my business run this way. And it's kind of a casual statement that you just throw out, but I think it's the same. It's kind of the same thing. Like, doesn't everybody think that way? And what I found is, no, it actually takes, like in a lot of cases, like, no, just stop and decide what you want. And you got to look at, it's beyond money. It's time, energy, and money, but you got to decide what you want to have a crystal clear picture. And then we can have a real serious conversation about how am I going to organize my business and how am I going to build my business so that it gives me what I want? The phrase we like to throw around a lot is, it's how do you build the business that you actually want? So it'll give you the outcome rather than just a business that you wake up one day and unfortunately have. And I have had times in my life where the second half of that statement applied to me. And there may be people listening that currently are like, yeah, the second half of that statement applies to me. And so the first thing to find out is, or to decide is, what do I want as an outcome? Like, what is the job of this business to deliver to me? And then we can talk about and actually make decisions in the business so that it will actually give me the things that I want. You did some finger waving like you had something to add.
So I just want to make one point because I want to drive this one home. Most people are focused on top line revenue. I don't care what the top line is. I care what you take home.
Amen.
And if you can keep your margins big so that you don't have to work hard and build a fat, big team and do all of these things, I'm shocked at how many businesses grow and make less because they overcomplicate it. That's all.
Yes. And at the end of this, I'll tell you how you can I'll put a page up or whatever with a link to where I talk about the return. It's really important because there's three currencies we have. It's time, energy, and money. And you have to define what you want in that order. And what most people do is they do money first. And then they try to do time and energy. And if you do money first, guaranteed you will have an affair on your goals for time and energy while you chase after the mistress of money. So you have to do it in the other order to get a really clear picture. I don't care about top line revenue. And when I work, I'm trying to make as much money as I can, but I'm also really, really clear that time matters most. There's a point where money matters more. It's like, well, I'm not even making enough to survive. Okay, but beyond that, where a lot of people, you can get to there really easily. Beyond that, like you protect time first rather than, no, we have to grow at all costs because every guru that I see on Instagram and on Facebook is talking about this amazing scale to 8 figures. Like, I don't care if I ever have an 8-figure business. I don't even care if my businesses stay at 7 figures. All I care about is the bottom line and what I'm trying to create in my life. Okay. Anyway, so off of soapbox onto actually answering the question that you asked, which is like, now that we know what we want, we've got to architect a business that will actually produce that for us. And the first piece is, you got to figure out, this is where you actually get into your numbers of, well, I'm going to sell one thing, or I have two things that I'm going to sell. Maybe they're services, maybe they're programs, maybe they're whatever. And then you got to actually be clear, well, how many of them do I have to sell in order for the numbers to equal what I want? And then you got to make sure that the math works. I always make the joke, like, it should at least work in Excel. If it doesn't work in Excel, it's not going to magically work in real life. just because it works in Excel doesn't mean it's going to work in real life, but you got to at least make it work there based on who you're going to hire and all that sort of stuff.
How many people do you know that actually go into Excel and model it?
So this was one of those, I thought everybody did. So I'm not like a traditional entrepreneur where I grew up, I went to business school, I was an employee, and I probably would still be an employee if they hadn't let me go. There's a whole nother story for maybe a different podcast episode. If they hadn't laid me off, it was my brothers, it was 2:30 in the morning, it's a whole backstory. So like I sort of fell into it because I already had 5 kids and there were no jobs that I could see that I would go get. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to start this business thing. So like I didn't have any formal structured training around business at all, but it did intuitively make sense that I should know what my numbers look like. And so I got into Excel and I just assumed everybody else did. And then I started talking to them. And what happens is entrepreneurs are really good at describing, they're really good at using words that make it sound like they're doing what you're talking about, but they're not. So it's like, hey, so you got like a financial model? Oh yeah, I totally got a financial model. And then you dig into it and it's like, oh, your financial model is that you sell this thing for $2,000 a month. That is not a financial model. How many are you going to sell? And then how many people do you need staffed in order to sell them? And how many people do you need staffed in order to deliver them? And how many can they actually handle? And are you creating roles that are realistic, or are these people going to want to leave in like a week because you've overwhelmed them, even though the numbers look cute for you? I have been drastically surprised by how many people are afraid to get in and actually just run the numbers. And when I've done it with clients, I've had a lot of clients that are like, oh, if I keep going down this path, I will not get where I want to go. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry and thank you at the same time, like better that we know it now. So surprisingly, not as many people as I would have thought. Okay, so it's know what you want, outcome. Second thing is you got to have this financial model. Then we get into, cool, now I know the things that I'm selling. Now we got to figure out the systems of how we're going to go about selling. And I'm gonna talk, like, these principles apply regardless of the type of thing that you sell. But I want to talk just for a second to the more servicey type business. My gut says that that's probably going to be a majority of the listeners that are either working one-on-one in some capacity with their clients, or there's like a coaching aspect where they're interacting. So like servicey to coaching type businesses. If I were to come into your business, I'm gonna skip sort of this big sort of theoretical principle thing. I'm just going to tell you what I would do if I was going to come in and consult and we're looking at your client journey. The first thing I would do is I would say, tell me the things that you sell. So let's say you have 2 or 3 different services that you sell or coaching programs that you sell. And the first thing I would do is, cool, do you have a dry erase board? I want you to show me exactly what happens as soon as somebody buys from you. And I want to walk through the experience and the process that gets followed after somebody buys. And here's why. 2 reasons why. In the more servicey business or the more coaching business, the bulk of the human capital time is spent delivering for clients. That's where most of your time is spent, is in the delivery for clients. You're working with them one-on-one. If you take up all the man hours in the business, likely 60, 70, maybe 80% of the time is spent delivering for what you just sold. The more servicey it is, the higher that number is. The less service is, the lower the number is. So what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for all of the places where we're leaking human capital. Where are all the places where we're answering the same questions over and over and over again? Where are all the places where we're putting out a fire because the person didn't know what was supposed to happen in the first place? Where are all the places where you're having this, like the same converse, like a new client comes in and you're doing all the training of your process and system, you're doing it live every single time? I'm looking for places to create margin immediately. And then we're going to design an onboarding. We call it the perfect client onboarding. We're going to design an onboarding that will dramatically cut and reduce the time that it takes you and your team to deal with clients. And it will also dramatically improve the level of client that you have so that it's easier to work with them. So I'm going to look at, like, as soon as they buy, what happens in the next 2 to 3 days, maybe a week, depending on what you sell, has the ability to make delivery for those clients either really easy or really painful. So that'd be the first thing I'd go look at. And I would invite anyone to be like, well, let's go look at it. And what you might see is your first call is always kind of long and you feel like you're not really getting a ton of progress done. And it's because you didn't prepare them at all for what you were about to talk about. Like, you could have given them some homework, or you could have sent them a little 5 or 10 minute training video before you got on your first kickoff call that said, hey, here's how things work around here. So that when you get on that first kickoff call, you can actually just get work done rather than trying to explain to them how work is actually going to get done. So that would be the first thing I would look at. And the first major benefit is we're going to save a tremendous amount of time and a tremendous amount of energy with all the clients we're working with. The second major benefit is when you know that the process that happens as soon as somebody buys is going to make them super pumped and super happy and super excited, you will sell differently. Like when you know that thing's streamlined, you have a selling confidence that's very different than when it's like, well, they're going to go, but I kind of hope that our fulfillment and our delivery process is working out. So that's where I would start is what is the process? It should be defined. It should be documented. And we're looking for how to deliver in a way where we can dramatically reduce the time and energy it takes to deliver for clients. So there's a couple other pieces I would probably get into, but that's the first one. So I'll do a pause because my guess is you probably have some insights or thoughts or stuff to add into the conversation.
I just assumed everyone did that. I know I do it. Sorry. I just assume these things, they're common sense.
For those that are listening, if I dive into this is one of those kind of tricky conversations too, where people are like, well, yeah, I send some stuff. Let me tell a story that I think will illustrate maybe the magnitude to which you can really leverage this. We had a client, his name's Chris Smith, and the current name of his company is called The Possibility Company. Really, really good dude. When we met him, he was like a freelance solo coach person that would help you uncover the story of your business, like your main brand identity and how to talk about it so that you could sell more. It's called the campfire effect at the time. And so we hired him to come do some work with us to do like a one-day workshop with our team. And so we had our whole team there. He came in and we're starting to go through things and, we're starting to like wrap our head around what he wants us to be thinking about. And he started like 10. It was probably like 2 or 2:30 when it was like, oh, like I'm really getting this. Like our team was like, oh, we're starting to see how this thing really clicks. And then we were done at 4 and it was a one-day workshop. And so what happened is we spent from 10 until 2 or 2:30 basically getting warmed up. And then it was from 2:30 to 4 is like when we actually started to really do stuff. And then we were done. And so then what happened is like we have a ton of questions. So now we become the client after that one-day event where he wants to walk out of the one-day event and be done. Now we've got a bunch of questions. So, he's making up like, okay, we'll hop on another call. We'll do another, whatever. And then this one-day thing turns into a 1 day plus 3 weeks type thing. And so we started to work. I was like, hey, here's what you ought to do. You ought to create a course, but not so you can sell the info course and live the digital marketer's dream where you never have to work another day in your life. But you should create a course that you're going to use as the precursor to your workshop. And so we're going to take what you did from 10 until 2:30, and we're going to put it into 30 to 45 minutes worth of training videos. And then the next time you do your workshop, we're going to actually say, you're going to tell people, by the way, when they buy, you're going to tell them like, hey, here's what's going to happen. And they're going to get access to this and they're going to go watch it and they're going to get warmed up on their own. And then they're going to show up to the workshop. And then what used to happen at 2:30 or 3 is now going to happen at 10 o'clock on the dot, like already ready to go. And now you got an entire day to make progress. So all that happened for him was he went from charging. I said, what did you used to charge? He's like, literally whatever people would pay. Like I would do some stuff with like bigger corporations. They'd pay me 10 grand. I would do like $1,000 for somebody else. It was like a one-day deal. And within like 1 or 2 months, it had shifted. He was charging $15,000 consistently. It was a 2-day event. And he's like, I got more done in the first day of the 2-day event than we would get done in the first day plus an entire year of coaching. Because he prepared the people for what was happening. And I could tell you story after story after story after story of how that worked. We've done the same thing in our businesses. So when you look at the process of how somebody comes on, it's not just an experience that's like, I want to make them happy. You're actually preparing them and you're looking ahead and saying, where are all the places where questions are going to come up? And how can I, without vomiting on them and giving them a list of 400 things to do, because that'll go the wrong direction, how can I make it feel easy, but actually upgrade who the client is so that when they show up to work with me, they're super easy? And that was just about getting value out of it. The other elements when you do this right is like your clients are just easy to work with. You just establish this is how we're going to work together. So anyway, it's all part of it. Like I said, it's part of a thing we do called the perfect client onboarding, where we like walk through, here are the pieces and the different, elements of collateral you want to send. But that would be the first thing. It provides immediate buffer and margin in the organization. And then also it will boost sales confidence and you'll actually be excited, but like, just trust me, just get in the process because this thing's going to it's going to roll. And then that will set you up so that as you need to flex, you have more room. You have more room to flex. So that would absolutely be the first place. It's the first place I would start in any business is we're going to go look at that and make sure that it's actually dialed in and it actually is doing what we want it to do. There's no sense in flooding a whole bunch of new people or doing a bunch of things up the chain as far as leads or prospects if we can't crush it in a systematic way for the people that we have.
And I just want to kind of apply this to every business, right? You're talking more in this case in a coaching business, but this is kind of the same thing that happens in McDonald's, right? You
Oh yeah.
walk up to the register, you order a burger. There's a whole system back there to get that burger to you quickly. And they know how to do that. So if you're listening, whatever your business is, take the principles and say, how do I do this in my business? How do I make things smooth and easy, whatever kind of business that I run?
Take IKEA or any place where you order furniture. I don't know. Anybody ever beat their head against the IKEA stick figure drawings that don't actually tell you how you're supposed to put the thing together while you're trying to figure it out? It's like, I'm getting something shipped to me. There's an entire experience while it's being shipped that is both an experience to build brand loyalty and love, and then also to prepare them for receiving whatever the physical thing is and build the anticipation of the unboxing of it, the opening of it, making it easy. I don't know how many times I have said out loud to my wife, I'm like, I'll tell you what, whoever it is that designs these things, typically it's the light fixtures when we're replacing them. They've never installed one and they should be shot. Or at a minimum, what they should be is they should be like, their hell is going to be that they're installing their own design light fixtures for people for eternity is what it's going to be. So it's like, just think about what the client's going to go through. Think about where you end up getting stuck and you start filling a ton of questions like hey, well, how do I install this? Or how do I do this or whatever? And then handle it ahead of time. You actually handle the problem before it ever comes up. I had a quote from one of my clients I love. He's like, if one of our clients ever has to ask a question, we screwed up. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. So wherever that question comes from, if I got questions coming in, it means there was a spot somewhere earlier that I should have already introduced that to them. And obviously there's some situations where questions come up. It's natural. But as a general rule of thumb, that's a really good litmus test for if they're asking me and I haven't told them or made it obvious, then I probably need to rethink about what I'm doing when I onboard my client.
Are you familiar with the book, They Ask You Answer?
No.
So exactly what you just said, they apply to the sales process. So
Okay.
he used to be a pool salesman and people would call him up and he'd drive an hour to deal with tire kickers who didn't know what the cost of the pool was, didn't know what they wanted. He said, I'm not dealing with this anymore. And what he basically did is they created videos and said, hey, these are the different kinds of pools. These are the different options. This is how we build a pool. This is what we do. And he said, people were on our website watching 10 hours of videos. They'd call us up and go, we're ready to buy a pool. I want this. How much does it cost? And what's the timeline? We're like,
so, yes.
Same exact concept at the beginning of the process.
Yeah. And imagine, so if we were to keep going, and I don't know what timing, how much time we have left, but if we were to keep going, we're going to talk about the same principles just at every stage of the client journey. But if you take that one too, move it back into the client side, because it applies in both. On the client side, you've got somebody they buy a custom website design. They actually sign up to buy a pool. They're building a custom house. You got a bunch of options that get decided after somebody buys. And those are the ones, like, you'll have a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of them, like in the pool design or the custom home design, where it's like, okay, now we're going back and forth and iterating over and over and over again after they've bought about the details of what they want. It's because of the same thing that the sales guy had, where it's like, I just haven't given them the tools to prepare them to actually be a better client. And I think, so this is a little bit of a soapbox statement, but I think that when we have not, anyone that has not done that, and any places like in my business where I haven't done it, it actually is because I don't respect and value my own time. So what this guy did, and this is a perfect example, this sales guy, what he did is he finally got fed up with wasting his time. He finally said, no, I'm going to respect my time and I'm going to set some boundaries and I'm going to require that you respect it. And the way I'm going to do it is not by being a prick and flipping you the bird, but I'm going to do it by putting a process in place that says, hey, by the time you get to me, you need to be ready with this. And I've made it easy for you. And so as soon as we get to the point where we recognize the places where we're leaking time, which is the key and the first thing in our return document that I mentioned before that we're trying to actually make become a reality, as soon as we get real about, oh, I'm actually the one that is letting it leak, I'm the one that's leaking it, and we decide to take a stand for our own time, then things will start to change in our client journey. And by the way, our clients will get on board. It makes their life easier. There's nothing about this that makes it harder for them. It makes it easier and they get more value.
So here's where I get pushback. I'm too busy handling fires. I don't have time to build this. I'm like, what do you tell them?
So the sarcastic side of me is like, then quit. I don't know. Like that to me is the same thing. Like, I don't like to sell, but I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't think you understand how this game works. So, okay, all sort of sarcastic joking aside, you have to create time. There is like, this is one of those, there is no way around it. So, a couple of things that I would say. Number one, there are 7 days in a week. And if you're working, let's say you're working 7 days. If you stopped working one of those days, and I'm assuming this is like, we're totally redlined out. If you just said, this is called, I'm going to take a stand for my time, and you're going to pick a day and you're going to say, I am not going to check it on this day. Like, let me put it this way. This is literally the way I think about it, because I went through a similar thing. And the way I think about it is, if I got sick and I literally could not get on my computer for a day, there might be some collateral damage in some frustrated clients or whatever, but the world would not completely fall apart on that day. Now, this was actually, now that we're talking about this was like a pivotal shift for me early on in my entrepreneur career, because what I realized is, like, I would be up until 2:00 in the morning. Like, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. And then I realized, no, I could go to bed at midnight. The 2:00 in the morning is an arbitrary decision for me. So the fact that I'm working 7 days a week, that's an arbitrary decision because I didn't set any boundaries. So I let it go to the max of how many days a week I could go. But if you're at 7 days a week and you said, nope, I'm taking one day, and I'm going to tell all my clients, like, hey, I am out on Saturdays, or I'm out on Sundays or Wednesdays or whatever it is. I'm taking this day, and I'm just not going to look at any of it. And I'll tell people, like, I'm not going to ghost people, but I'll just tell them, like, hey, I'm out, and I will talk to you on Monday or whatever the next day is that you work. And then that day becomes starting to clean it up. If you're working 6 days a week because you're like, no, I already have one, but that's my personal day, then you can take Saturday. And it's not like it's a 5-year process. This is something that you can install like in the next couple of weeks, and you just carve out a time and you're like, look, there's crap over there. There's fires over there. I'm going to do everything I can during business to handle that. And then I'm going to create some time that is not during business, but it's to work on business. Another good analogy, just real quick, that I came up literally this week when I was talking to somebody is, it's like at the house, you have chores, and then you have like remodel projects. In the business, you have chores and you have remodel projects. And what people do is they're like, well, I just have too many chores. No, just decide that your chores are going to happen Monday through Friday, and then give yourself some time on Saturday, or Monday through Thursday and the first half of Friday. But you got to carve out time. If you literally cannot carve out time, then your business model is so poorly broken that you should blow it up anyway. Like, there's no other way. There's no other way around it. So just decide to carve out some time. Maybe you'll lose a client, and that might be what you need to get your system in place so that when you rebuild, right? Maybe you need to scale back to scale up, and like, well, I'm just going to let that client go, and then I'm going to use that time to work on my own business, and then I'll move it forward. So it's one of those. It's kind of a hard truth, but it also is. It's the reality, and the only way around it is you have to create the time. You got to have enough respect for your own time to create the time to build the systems that then give you time.
And I agree with you. We got a couple minutes left. Is there anything you want to make sure that we cover today?
No, nothing else. All I was thinking if there's anything new. I'm like, no, I would just do a recap, which is number one. Make sure you know what it like. Your business has a job, and the first job is not to serve your clients. It's actually to give you what you wanted out of the business. You get that by delivering for your clients what it is that they want and what they need. So first, be clear on what you want. And we'll give a link here in a second, but I've got, like I said, I got a YouTube video where I walk through. There's a whole worksheet and a process to define it. I'll give you guys access to that. You can just go get it. Second piece is you got to have a financial plan. Like, you got to have very clear now, what does the business need to look like for that to work? And Excel is going to be the easiest way to do it. You could technically do it on a dry erase board. You're going to do a lot of manual math, but you have to be able to, you got to have something that says, now here's what I sell, how many I sell, what I'm selling it for. Here's the staffing. That is a plan that actually gets there. And then on the client side, obviously there's more we could talk about, but if I'm going one thing about getting clients and making it more systematic, I call it starting after the dollar sign. What happens as soon as somebody buys, and walk through the process we talked about. In fact, so we have this thing I call the perfect client onboarding. And we actually created a little loophole backdoor. We could give it away to free for some people because we were charging for it before. I'll include a link if any of you guys want that. It's like, here are the videos and the scripts and the stuff you want in. So I'll put it on the page, but install the perfect client onboarding for all of the major offerings that make up, are the things that you sell. Those would be with any entrepreneur that's like, it's not quite working out. I don't quite have the business that I want. Those would be the 3 steps I go through in that order. What do you want? What's the plan of how you're going to get it? Now let's start with what's going to happen as soon as somebody buys from you, so that we're not leaking energy by delivering as we deliver for our clients, which will give us more time to then go continue to build the rest of the business that we want.
So if people want to learn more about you, your systems, processes, get the links, where are they going?
Okay, so the best thing to do for the links is go to smoothscaling.co. So smoothscaling.co /Rocky. Smoothscaling.co /Rocky. I'm just going to put a page up that has links out to everything. So there'll be a thing there where if you want, I have an email newsletter I send out. You can opt in for it. But as far as the other things, I'll just point out to the different training videos so you can go get those. And then if you want to connect directly with me, a couple of ways. You could email me if you have any questions or whatever. It's brad@sixthdivision.com. You can find that. So brad@sixthdivision.com. And then I'm on, Facebook and Instagram would be the ones where I'm the most active. I technically have some stuff on LinkedIn, but I'm not really super active there. So just facebook.com/Brad. You can find me on Facebook or find me on Instagram. But reach out. Happy to help with any questions that I can. And then check out the smoothscaling.co /Rocky, and I'll plug all the stuff there. Plus, if I come up with anything else between now and the time that you're actually listening to this, I'll drop it on there too for some bonuses.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Where do you need systems for your people to run? Where can tech make your life easier? Do you know how to put it all together? Sometimes you need to realize it's not how do I do this, but who can help me do it so that you can do what you love. That's why we say you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. Remember, let's focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your Chief Profitability Officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.